What comes to mind when you hear the word homeless? Somebody that's drunk, schizophrenic, or even somebody that's asleep on the street. You even see a lot of these stereotypes portrayed in the media.
There are more homeless in New York City than ever before.
By late afternoon, the homeless returned.
Aggressive and growing homeless population.
But if you've ever watched an episode of this show, you know that there's more to the story than that. Behind the headlines, there's a category of people that are routinely hidden: homeless students. Let's start with an inside look at what it's like to be a homeless student. For that, we have to give a huge shout out to Jacob, a student reporter and recent grad from Hillsdale High in San Mateo, California. He introduced us to his homie Dante, who was homeless for about 6 months in middle school when he was 12 years old.
I had him from one of my classes, and he vaguely brought up the point that he was homeless at one point of his life, but he didn't really want to explain why.
Just how big of a problem is student homelessness? And how are they supposed to get help? I met up with Dante to hear his story.
It was 2012, and it was just me and my uncle and my grandma who were living in the house. I was walking down the hill, and my mom was outside, and I remember she had already started crying, her eyes were red. My grandma had just passed away. And like after that, it kind of dropped. Like what happened was my uncle, he kind of kicked us out. It was barely like 4 days after, and he was basically like, you guys gotta go. It gets me mad talking about it, but it's terrible, but it's whatever. So we moved in with my mom's friend for a little while until we found a shelter. It was difficult, you know. When I lived in the shelter, I couldn't take showers in the morning, so you know, I stunk a little. One thing my mom says I'm good at is coping. Like that's one of the best things. Like she says I can be sleeping on a hardwood floor and still not be complaining. Like as long as I have somewhere to sleep, right?
There are many reasons why people become homeless. Maybe their rent is too high, maybe you're LGBTQ and your parents don't approve so they kicked you out. Each situation is unique to the individual and where that person lives. But once students are homeless, it's really difficult to identify them because different federal agencies have different definitions of how to define who's homeless. HUD, the Department of Housing and Urban Development, has a pretty simple definition. You're homeless if you're A, living in a shelter, or B, living on the street. The agency has almost $2 billion set aside to help the homeless. So if you're in either of those two categories, you're eligible for some of that money. In 2015, HUD counted over 560,000 homeless people. And to get that number, the agency uses an interesting method. On a single night during what's usually the coldest part of the year, around late January, workers and volunteers count the number of homeless people they see living in shelters and living in the streets at that one specific point in time. This gives us a snapshot of how many homeless people there are in the country during that year. But that count misses most homeless students. 80% of them couch surf, they live in motels, or they double up with other family or friends. They don't live on the street or in shelters, but they also don't have a permanent home of their own. The Department of Education does consider these students homeless, and they estimate that there are 1.3 million of them. That's double the amount from just 10 years ago. So how do homeless students get the help they need? Increasingly, schools have picked up the slack. Every public school is required to have a homeless liaison on staff. It's that person's job to make sure that homeless students have a smooth, stable experience while at school. But there's a problem. States haven't been required to track their graduation rates until very recently. But in the 5 states that do, the data is pretty clear. Homeless students are much less likely to graduate. A recent report offers a reason why. Most homeless students were uncomfortable telling people at school about their situation. The stigma of being homeless prevented them from seeking help. How did the other students and faculty and teachers treat you?
I tried not to interact with students. Like the people that I knew, you know what I'm saying? Like they were cool with me. Like they kind of knew my situation. As a young man, like 11 or 12, like you're not gonna want to tell anybody because you think being homeless is like being someone who's on the street, you know, dirty, not clean, you know, nowhere to stay. Like those things go through your mind, so you feel like as if you have no reason to tell anybody.
What about like your grades? What about attendance? Like how did that, what
Attendance
happened?
was good, got in trouble a lot. I did homework, but I didn't at the same time. My mom worked at Goodwill for like 2 years. It was pretty hard on me, seeing her like struggle. I like to bike and other things like that, so I would stay out until like 7. I would ride to Goodwill. I would get in the car, start doing homework, get bored, have nothing to do. And I would just sit there and think, just like, is this gonna be it? Is this gonna, you know what I'm saying? Like, is this gonna be it?
After 6 months in a homeless shelter, with the help of a better paying job, a housing program, and support from friends, Dante and his mom moved into their current home.
It's crazy, because I made it out of that. Like, there's always that hope, you know what I'm saying, that drive that you always have. I don't know why, but you always got it, but like, and it was kind of that, like my mom calls it, like the little guy, you know what I'm saying? It was like, just keep going.
So now we want to hear from you. What can your school, or even just you, do to support homeless students? Let us know in the comments below. And again, thank you for tuning in, and we'll catch you next time.